Conspiracy. Conspiracy requires an agreement, express or implied, to accomplish an unlawful objective, or to accomplish a lawful objective with unlawful means. 2. An intent to agree to commit conspiracy. 3. An intent to achieve the unlawful objective. 4. An overt act in furtherance of the objective of the conspiracy. Intent to agree to the conspiracy. There must be at least 2 guilty minds to be liable for conspiracy. Under the minority jurisdictions, unilateral intent is sufficient if the guilty mind genuinely believed that the other non-guilty mind had the intent to agree to the conspiracy. Co-conspirators are liable for the target crime and any crimes committed in furtherance of the conspiracy. Receipt of stolen property. Receipt of stolen property requires receipt or control of stolen property. 2. Of personal property by another. 3. With the knowledge that the property was obtained in a way that constitutes a criminal offense. 4. With the intent to permanently deprive. Attempt. Attempt requires the specific intent to achieve the criminal act and a substantial step in the direction of the commission of the act or dangerously close to the commission of the act. Robbery. Robbery is the crime of larceny by physical force or threats of imminent physical force to the person of another. Threats of force to the person of another. The threats of force must be imminent and create the apprehension of the fear of physical force. Economic force is not enough. The force must be directed at another person's person. Larceny. Larceny is the trespassery, taking, carrying away, the property of another, with the intent to permanently deprive. Trespassery is the interference with another's property. It does not request permanent deprivation like conversion does. The D must physically take the personal property and carry it away. The slightest movement suffices as carrying away, including putting it in one's purse or taking something from a shelf. Personal property is a removable object and includes objects and money. Intent to permanently deprive. Kidnapping. Kidnapping is the act of confining another person with movement or in a concealed place. Kidnapping is a general intent crime and requires an intent to perform the proscribed conduct or an awareness of the circumstances of one's conduct or that a proscribed result may occur. Attempt. Attempt is an act to commit a proscribed crime that falls short of the completed crime. Under the majority view, a defendant is guilty of attempt when he takes a substantial step in committing the proscribed crime. Under the minority view, a defendant is guilty of attempt when he is dangerously close to completing crime. Attempt is a specific intent crime, and the defendant must act with a specific intent to commit the crime. Attempted kidnapping requires an act with the intent to kidnap another person. Solicitation. Solicitation requires 1. The defendant to request or ask another person to commit a crime, and 2. An intent that the requested crime be committed. Solicitation is a specific intent crime. If there is an agreement between the parties to commit the crime, solicitation merges with conspiracy and is no longer alive for purposes of prosecution. Entrapment. In order to bring a successful entrapment defense, a defendant must show 1. The government unduly encouraged/enabled/aided the defendant in the commission of the crime, and 2. The defendant would not have committed the crime but for the government's actions. Elements of theft. Larceny, or theft, is the taking or concealing of the property of another with the intent to permanently deprive the owner or rightful possessor of that property of the property. Taking. A taking of the property. The property of another, or conceals it on his person. Intent to permanently deprive. A defendant need not have had the intent to permanently deprive the owner or rightful possessor at the time that the taking of the property occurred. It is enough that the intent to permanently deprive arose after the taking. Embezzlement. Embezzlement is a type of theft and is the taking of a piece of property that the defendant had a right to possess at the time of the taking. Conspiracy. There is a conspiracy when 2 or more people agree to commit a crime with the specific intent to commit the crime. Under the common law, there must be bilateral conspiracy, whereby both parties to the agreement specifically intend to commit the crime. There is also no overt act requirement under the common law. However, more recently, the MPC, federal law and majority of jurisdictions all require that there be an overt act in addition to the agreement for a conspiracy to be found. The MPC also allows for there to be unilateral conspiracy, when a party can be guilty of conspiracy for a crime even though the other party did not actually want to commit the act, i.e. in the case of an agreement with an undercover police officer. Conspiracy does not merge with the actual crime committed, and thus, even if the substantial crime is performed, a person could also be guilty of conspiracy of that crime. Pinkerton. Under the Pinkerton rule, all co-conspirators are responsible for all substantive crimes that are committed by co-conspirators that are foreseeable and are in furtherance of the crime. Larceny. Larceny is the taking and moving of another person's property without their consent with the intent to deprive them of it permanently. Robbery, no threat of force. Robbery is larceny from another person's presence or person through threat or intimidation. Burglary. Burglary is the breaking and entering into a dwelling at nighttime with the intent to commit a felony inside. The requirements for dwelling and nighttime have been relaxed in many jurisdictions. Withdrawal. A co-conspirator could withdraw from a conspiracy depending on the jurisdiction. Under the common law, a co-conspirator cannot withdraw from a conspiracy because the conspiracy occurs when the agreement is made. However, even under the common law, a co-conspirator could withdraw from the conspiracy even after the agreement is made so as to not be held responsible for future crimes. However, such withdrawal must be made clearly to the other co-conspirator, or also typically requires informing the police. Under the majority rules, a co-conspirator can withdraw from a conspiracy provided that it is before an overt act has taken place, and the co-conspirator either makes an affirmative declaration of intent to withdraw to the co-conspirator, or alternatively, informs the police. Under the MPC/minority rule, a co-conspirator could withdraw even after the overt act, provided that they take actions to thwart the crime. Duress. Duress is a defense whereby the defendant argues that they had to commit a crime because they or a third party were under an imminent threat that threatened serious bodily harm or death. For a defense of duress, the threat must be imminent. Accomplice liability. Accomplice liability will attach when an accomplice aids a principal in performing a crime with the specific intent that the crime be performed. Note, under the common law, the accomplice needs to only aid intentionally and knowingly. An accomplice will also be liable for all the substantive crimes that the principal has done.